today are going to be focusing on how to look at your financial standing. Fun stuff. Here's basically a rundown of what we're going to do, objectives wise, and I'll get started off here. Starting off, net worth statements. We're going to talk about what is a net worth statement and kind of why it's important to us. A basic definition for a net worth statement is a listing of the things that you own and how you acquired to get those things, so debt essentially. Net worth, the formula to figuring out net worth. Does anybody know the formula? Anybody remember that from finance or 230 maybe?
Assets minus liability.
Alright, nice. You got one. Assets minus liabilities. So basically, from the definition I gave you, what you own, assets minus what you owe, your debt, should be liabilities. And I kind of like to think about it. A net worth statement is basically just a picture of everything on your farm, and then just putting it, like, date it, and then, list whether it's an asset or a liability. Some assets, things that you own on a farm. Regularly, net worth statements can be your personal or your business, what you owe. As far as farming goes, name some assets. Anybody know?
Equipment.
There you go. Land, machinery, buildings. You can classify these into basically 4 different categories of fixed, current, intermediate, and long term, depending on how they affect your financial standing. Liabilities, you name some liabilities. How do you acquire some of this stuff? Take out loans, sign leases, right? Taxes would be a liability, mortgages for a house or a building. Classification liability is basically the same. Current, fixed, intermediate, long term. We'll be going into more along the lines of what exactly those mean later on, in more detail. Types of assets are included in net worth statement. We kind of went over that, but basically property, plant, equipment, and the money that you owe on all that stuff.
Alright, next thing we're going to talk about is why is a net worth statement important? Does anybody know? Does anybody got any comments? Ryan, what do you got? What?
Can you repeat the question?
Why is it important? Why is a net worth statement important?
That way you know your debt to asset ratio.
Alright.
Walk into a bank and let them know a little bit ahead of time what you got and what you owe.
Alright. We got anything else? So basically what Ryan said, so we know our financial statement and borrowing position, so we know if we are able to take out a loan or not. And if you're in debt, you ain't gonna be able to take out a loan. Well, I guess if you're in big debt, you probably won't be able to. And also, if we know the consecutive years worth of data, that allows us to track our progress, so we know if we're in debt or not. And also, it shows the profitability of our long-term and short-term.
What is needed all in the net worth statement? There's a lot of basic things and some things you might not always think of putting on there, but cash flow, you can use that as a reference material. All of your committees got a cash flow earlier to use, which you should all look at, analyze by now. But you can get numbers like prepaid expense off there and stuff like that. That'd be a current liability, and in a little bit, we'll show you where that goes and stuff in the net worth. But that's why if you keep it categorized, it'll make it creating your net worth a lot easier later. So that's why it's always good to keep good statements and everything to make your net worth, because you only make a net worth typically, you make it at the beginning of the year. Or if you're going in to see a banker for a loan, you make one before that. And familiar size with the ratio, the different kind of ratios, which we'll go into here a little bit in depth later, and then all your committees will get to practice them. But that way, because different loaners and banks are gonna wanna look at ratios differently. Like, oh, they got a good debt to asset ratio, so that puts them up a couple more points in being able to get a loan compared to having a bad one, or good solvency, stuff like that. So just things you gotta make sure you're looking at and have them calculated, because if you go in there just with a net worth statement that's half put together, they aren't gonna have faith that you're gonna be able to make payments and do the things you need to be able to do. And lastly, you'll need a calculator because it's all math. Okay. This is a net worth statement, a basic format of one. You have your farm assets, your current ones. And, I mean, that's like that'd be probably your prepaid expense. If it's prepaid, it goes there, because that way it's already paid for, so it's an asset technically. And your machinery, depending on the machinery, like tractors would be intermediate. Okay. So, and farmland, it would be a long term, because it's something that you're gonna have long term, just like your house and buildings like that. Could anybody else give me a different asset and where it could belong? Kenneth?
Sure, I can take that.
Great.
Okay. And that'd be current, because I mean, it's pretty, green could be almost current, right cash.
Like your pickup and go under intermediate.
Okay.
It's not classified as machinery technically.
Yep. Correct. Anything else? But, I mean, you get the idea that it's just, if it's gonna be around on the farm for less than a year, it's gonna be on the current. It's gonna be on, basically, you can use it from 2 to 5 years, intermediate. And from then on, it's gonna be a long-term asset where, like your grain bins, those are long-term. And liabilities, accounts payable, like if you have fertilizer bought, but you don't have it paid for, that's still a liability because you haven't paid for it yet. And yeah, that'd be a current one. And intermediate would be like a loan, like a 5-year loan. Or instead of that, you got 10-year loans maybe, or 15-year loans on land, that'd be a long term. It just depends how long a loan is to what kind of liability it is. You also have interest on that loan each year you pay, that's a current, and the payment you're making is also a current liability. That part of that loan goes on the current, just because that's what you do in the next 12 months. Anybody got examples of current liabilities? Because everybody has a lot of liabilities they gotta pay.
Property taxes.
And that'd be current.
Pretty soon, they'll do March 1st.
Better get to the tax man then. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory if you know what your stuff is, where it's gonna go. I mean, yeah, you might keep a tractor for assets, you might keep a tractor on the farm 20 years. But that doesn't make it a long term, just because you kept it 20 years. You depreciate it out, and as you depreciate it, it comes off cash flow and stuff. And then at the bottom, you have to figure in your personal, they make you, which is just the basics, what your bank account is and stuff like that. And, I mean, like you said, your truck, that might be under personal, or if it's the farm truck, it just depends how you have it designated.